Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do part 6 in our Unreal Materials Mastery tutorial series, and today we're going to do the ceiling tiles. Now this is going to be one of the last materials that we're going to do in this series, and we've already done, and here you can see them right there, they're going to be more like the foamy materials on the ceiling tiles, and then for the rails it'll be more like the painted over aluminum rails that you would normally have on the ceiling tiles, but with like a painted finish that'll be a little bit glossy. So far we've done the ceramic tiles on the walls, we've done the marble tiles on the floor, we've done the carpet, and we've done the stainless steel. And as far as major materials go in the scene, this ceiling tiles one is going to be the last one that we're going to need to work on. And in the future, we'll probably do the emissives for the lights. And I will go over lighting and kind of how we put this scene together and to get it to render with this really nice, clean aesthetic. But today we are going to be working on the ceiling tiles, and you can see them here on the ceiling. And this is the one we're going to do today. So just a quick reminder, I am a small channel, so liking, subscribing, watching would even be the best, because watch time is the one I need. Liking, subscribing would be great. I really appreciate all of you. So now we're going to head over to Substance Designer and work on the texture maps. So here we are in Substance Designer, and you can see our graph, and this is a pretty mid-level to low-level graph. And don't worry, I'll take you through section by section, start to finish, from the left to the right. To get to this point, just go File, New, Substance Graph up here, and just put in whatever you want to name it. I named mine T-Tiles Ceiling, 2048 by 2048, and just create. And then on your screen, you're going to have a bunch of different outputs, and you can get rid of a bunch of the outputs, but you're going to want to save color. You're going to want to save roughness. So let's start at the beginning of our map over here in the shape section. Now to put in nodes, you just hit the space bar, look them up. So when you're in your graph, just hit the space bar, and then this one's a tile generator grayscale. And there it is right there. And I'll let you know what node to put in. Just look them up, just like I did right there. And over on the right hand side of these nodes, there's going to be settings. And you're going to want to copy all the settings that I tell you to set over here. Now, there's a lot of numbers on this first tile generator grayscale, but don't be intimidated. Most of the nodes will have more simplistic settings. And I will go through each and every setting on each and every node and walk you all the way through from start to finish. If I do miss a setting, I shouldn't, but I'll try to catch it in editing. Otherwise, I will have this open on the right-hand side, and you can see what the numbers are over there if something's kind of looking kind of wonky for you. Okay, so let's just get into it. So we're starting off with our shape section and put in a tile generator grayscale. And on this one, I'm going to have to go relatively quickly through because we've got quite a few nodes to cover. So tile generator grayscale, X amount 3, Y amount 2, pattern square. All of these, I believe, are just set to 0. Those are just default settings. This is all default. This interstice, XY, I'm not sure if I pronounce that right, but interstice X at 0.012, and then scale at 0.97, 0.97. And let's see, the rest of the way down looks like it's all the default settings. And that should give you this like 3x2 tiley thing here. Then we'll take the tile generator grayscale output and run it into an invert grayscale node. So just look that one up. That just flips the colors around. Take the output of that and run it into the background of a blend. And this blend is set at multiply 1. Okay. Now we're going to have to go back and say what goes into that blend. So we start over here with a shape. So look up shape. Come down here. It looks like these settings are all pretty the standard. It's set at square, scale 1, X size 1, Y size 0.003. And there you go. And what that does is it'll just make this thin line here. We'll invert that with an invert grayscale. We'll run this up to a transform 2D. And then in the transform 2D under Y offset, it's 0.0085. And then we run this up into the top of that first multiply blend. And what that's doing is it's adding a little bit of a cut in here in between the rails. So see now there's the shape is kind of cut in right there, and that's what that does. So that's our first blend. Run that down to another blend. Same thing, multiply 1, and then same invert grayscale to another transform 2D, and this one is negative 0.0085, and then run that over the top. And now you can see we'll have a cut here and here. So now you get an idea of what we're trying to do. The other thing we want to do is add some cuts at the top and the bottom. So we'll do those as well. So we'll run this into another blend, multiply 1, take our invert grayscale here again into our transform 2D. This one, we're going to put in 0.492, run that up into the foreground of the blend. And this is multiply 1 again. Run that blend again down into this other blend and multiply 1, and then run our invert grayscale again into another transform 2D right here. And this one's negative 0.492. And as you can see, it's pulling these down so it can add the cuts along the bottom edge here, you can see. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see there's these cut-ins at the tops and the bottoms here. There. That's what we're trying to do. And you can see they run all the way through the end. And that's to get our shape for our rails. Okay? So now we have our shape section done. Let's run that into our next section, which we call height. Okay? And if you want to put in these comments, all you have to do is select your nodes, like draw a square around them, and then hit this little guy up here, and that adds comments. Okay? So from our last blend of the shape section, run it into a bevel. And in this bevel, we have distance 0.005, we have corner type angular, and we have smoothing 0.1. And these are important settings. The distance 0.005, angular, smoothing 0.1. This what gives us our nice bevel here along the rails. That's kind of the one we're looking for. So we take the height from that bevel and we run it into a levels. And you can see I pulled the dark handle to the right and the white handle to the left of this levels. Let's kind of look at it in the 2D view. And that's just to level it out, to get the height leveled out a little bit. And you can see if you click on this little dude on the right here, you can actually enter the numbers for the level. So if you want to put the exact numbers in, otherwise try to copy mine. Sometimes a good idea to copy mine, or if you're getting bad results, just put in the numbers. Take that levels into a blend here, into the background of a blend. And this blend is set at multiply 0.35. So that's in the background of that blend. Now we'll figure out what we need for the foreground. So we go down here and we'll just do a grunge concrete. And for this, I did change some of the settings, I believe, for the grunge concrete. So I'm just going to run through them. Most of them will probably be the same, but I know I did change some stuff. Like I did drop the scratches opacity down for sure. So balance is 0.5, contrast 0, base 1, dirt speckles opacity 0.5. I believe those are default. Scratches opacity is what I changed, 0, sharpen 0.5. and large variation intensity 0.5. So I just took the scratches out because I'm going to use this to kind of make our styrofoamy kind of look here, the very small bumpiness of it, but I didn't want scratches in that because scratches in this doesn't make sense. So take the grunge concrete output here and run it into the foreground of this blend. Now what are we doing for the opacity of the blend? Let's figure that one out. Okay. So we took the height from the beginning here of our height section, and this is that bevel. We run that up into a histogram scan, which I call mask rails. And in the histogram scan, we're just scanning 0.98 and contrast 0. So that'll give us this really nice black and white mask, which determines whether we have a foamy area or like the painted on rails area. Okay, so take that histogram and run that up to an invert grayscale, and that just inverts it. I like to have a version of both white on black and black on white. This just inverts it to the white being the foamy part. So now you take the output of this invert grayscale back down to where we were, into the opacity of that first blend, right? So now we're mixing the two things together. We're mixing our leveled out here for like our bevel, right? And then we're mixing over here, we're mixing kind of our concrete, which is giving us the foamy effect. Now we take that blend, remember that's multiply 0.35. We take that blend, run it into another blend. This one subtract 0.03. And what we're going to do here is we're going to plug in a grunge shavings over the top of that. And I believe most of these should be the right settings, but I think you should check just to make sure. So I'm going to run through them. Balance 0.5, contrast 0, scratch spot amount 0.5, spots tiling 2, dust intensity 0.5, and sharpen intensity 0.25. And that gives us this grunge shavings. Now bring that output up here into the foreground of the blend. And then in the background, again, we're going to use that opacity mask. So we go back up to our mask inserts here, and then bring down that pin into the opacity. And this gives us this, where now we have those speckly deeper cut-ins for our foam, as you can see right here. Okay, you can see them kind of cutting in. So that's pretty much the end of our height section, but I want to warp that a little bit because it's a little bit too perfect. A lot of times these rails get a little bit bent when you look at them and you're looking up at the ceiling. So we take the output there, bring that into a directional warp. This one's set at 1.25. You can see the warp angle here that's the setting there. It's a longer number, but if you can just kind of put one up in the like kind of top left here, degrees 37.99 for the directional warp. And we powered that with a Perlin noise. So put in a Perlin noise. Looks like I randomized this one. If there's a randomized section, you can tick this little button here to randomize it yourself. Or if you want the exact same results that I have, you have to put in this long string of numbers here. This 224989618 right there. And now there are other settings for the Perlin: scale 6, disorder 0, disorder speed 1. Everything else is default. You take the output of that and run that into our intensity input of the directional warp. And what that does is it just kind of warps everything just ever so slightly. Now, one thing to note is that we are going to use this exact same warp a couple times. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But that's why I named this same warp. Kind of goofy naming, but that was the way I could remember. Because we're going to warp different parts, and we want to warp it the exact same in each of the different parts. So now we'll run this directional warp into a normal. And that intensity is set to 3. And then run the normal into a normal output and name that an NRM in the identifier up here. And an output, you can just search if you want. And put one in if you deleted the original ones out. Otherwise, just use the normal one that I said to keep. And then just put an NRM. And that'll show up over here under your T-tile ceilings, under your outputs. And then that way, it'll name your image T-tile ceiling NRM. All right, so let's zoom out of our normal here, and we've gotten this whole bottom section done. You can see here our maps and then all the way down to our normals. So now let's hop over to our roughness section. To start that out, we'll start with our mask inserts again, the invert grayscale one, and we'll take the output of that, run that over into a blend of multiply 0.4, right? And then we'll put in a uniform color down here, tick on the grayscale. Then over here, you can just set it to B4, 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 or you can put in the values, but just put in the hex B4, B4, B4. Okay. Now we run that uniform color into the background of the blend, And remember, we ran the mask for the inserts over the top and multiplied at 0.4, so we get a lighter roughness for the foam, and we get a darker one for the rails. Okay, so now we'll run that blend into another blend, and this one's set to screen 0.14. What we're going to do is just kind of vary the roughness a little bit of the rails. And we will go up here, make a grunge leaks. And I believe all the settings for grunge leaks are just default. So bring that one down into the foreground of the blend and blend it over the background of our original blend for our roughness. And then for the opacity mask, we go back to the mask rails. Remember, that's the one that's white on black. So we'll take the output of that, run that up into the opacity mask. And now you can see for our roughness, you have the rails, have a variation in the rails for the roughness, and it's very steady for the foam. So that's at screen 0.14. And we take that output from that blend and run that into the same warp again from the other warp that we used as the other one. So we go down here, grab it, Control C, Control V, and then you can delete out this. And then once you have that, you can just move this into place and then hook her up, right? But you just want to make sure that you're doing the same settings. So grab this directional warp, the output from that, and run that into our roughness output. Put ROUGH in the identifier, and now our roughness map is done. All right, now that we're done with roughness, let's zoom out here. And we're going to start our color section here. We've gotten all of this done on the bottom half so far. So we're kicking right along. This one should be a quicker tutorial. Not too bad. So up here in color, we'll add a uniform color. And that's DFD8D8 for the hex, for the first one. And then for the second one, CCCBC3 for the hex. Now we'll run both of those uniform colors into a blend. This will be multiply 0.27. Kind of see the result we're getting there. And then bring up our mask inserts here, this invert grayscale, run that into the opacity mask. And this is the result you'll get of the two blended together. You have a little bit of variation between the tiles themselves and the rails. So bring that blend over to another blend. This one's multiply 0.26. What we're going to do is add, you can see if we zoom in, it's very faint. You can see if we zoom in, you can see there's a very faint ambient occlusion baked in. Okay? So to get that, let's go back. And from our height, the end of the height one here, this blend at the end of our height section, see, right, the one that we did the grunge shavings into, we take that blend up into a levels, and then pull the white handle way down, and you can barely see anything here. You can see very, very faint. And you can see here in the settings, here are the level settings if you want to put that in exactly. And we'll run this levels into an ambient occlusion HBAO. You can see what that does is it's kind of occluding very faintly in where we have our foam and then when we have our bevel for our rails. So we'll take that ambient occlusion HBAO, which I believe is all the default settings on. If not, the height depth is 0.1, radius 1, 8 samples. And we'll run this into a gradient map. The only thing we're doing with that is allowing us to blend it with color. Just make sure the color mode is set to color here. So boom, into the gradient map. The output of the gradient map over the top of this blend very lightly adds some ambient occlusion to our material. Okay? So that's the end of our color section. Now we'll run that into, remember, that same warp again. That directional warp that we used 3 times in this for each map. So if you go down here, just Control C, Control V, you'll have to get rid of this. Then you can just move that in there. No problem. Hook it up. So hook this to this and the directional warp, and then the output of the directional warp into the base color output. And for that, you just put COL for the identifier. And that's basically it for our maps. We now have our base color, we have our roughness, and we have our normal. can see those represented under our graph here called norm rough. And it's important to do this same warp. There's other ways of doing it, so you're just warping it at one point. But this is the way for this graph that I found. It was the most convenient way of doing it. So now that we're done with our material here, all we have to do is export our maps, and then we can go over into Unreal and test them out in a material. So right-click on T-Tile Ceiling here, Export Outputs. I set everything to sRGB, called Norm Rough sRGB. You can see it's showing us a preview of what it's going to name them with our prefix and suffix. And you can see here, just choose a folder. I'm exporting to BMPs and so let's just export. Okay, close. And now that's it. Now I'll see you over on Unreal. Okay, so now we're back here on Unreal, and you can see our ceiling tiles. Let's go and import our textures. So in my content folder here, I also put a textures folder. So we'll click on that, and that's where I put the textures, and you can put them in whatever folder you want. So just right-click in your content browser here, import to current folder, and you'll have to browse to wherever you put them. I put mine in tile ceiling, and here are the three textures: T-tile ceiling cull, T-tile ceiling norm, and rough. So let's just select all of those, open them. Mine are going to overwrite the ones that I already have in here. If you don't have any in there, it'll just go right in. So just hit yes, yes, yes. And there you go. Now mine are in. You can see there was no change in our material. That's because because we made them the exact same way. So we'll just save this quick. And now we need to make the material. And this is basically the simplest material you can make. And if you've made other materials with me, you'd probably be like, wow, that really took nothing. So let's open my materials folder. And to make a new material in your content browser, just right click and go to material. Okay. I named mine M Tile Ceiling. You can see it right here. Just name it M Tile Ceiling. I'll get rid of the one I just made there. And pull this back down. And here's my M-tile ceiling. I'll just open that up. And in here, this is as basic of a material in Unreal just about you'll find. So it just has these three texture samples in here. And I'll show you how to get those in. So you go down to your textures here, and then find your T-tile ceiling rough there. Here's our normal, and here's our cull, right? Just pull them in. It'll make texture samples. And then once you have those in, do our T-tile ceiling color into base color, do our T-tile ceiling rough into roughness, and do our T-tile ceiling norm into norm, and there's your material. And that's it. That's the whole thing. That's this whole material. So that just goes to show you, if you're getting the results you want, you can have a really simple material. And we have ours here. And what we were looking for mostly, if I zoom in, is this really tight contrast between where the metal is, or the painted metal is, and the foam. And we also wanted this really nice foamy, like styrofoamy kind of material to contrast the painted metal there. And if you get it just right, and let's go look over here. You can see how you get the shine on the rails, but you don't get as much on the foam, and that's how it would react in real world. So you can see kind of here how it's kind of, you're getting that shimmer, but the foam is normal. So there you go. So that's pretty much it for this material. This one was a very simple one. Sometimes they can be simple and you still get kind of good results that you're looking for. All we were looking for here was ceiling tiles, and we got them. So there you go. So that's going to wrap up this tutorial. This is going to be the 6th one we've done. We've done so far the marble floor, the carpet, the stainless steel, the ceramic tiles, and now the ceiling tiles. And we also had a primer video for this series. In the future, I will do probably at least one more in this series, and we're going to go over the lighting. So we'll go over the missives, materials, and we'll go over the lighting, and then I'm going to kind of cover how I got this clean render and what settings I used and what Lumen settings I used and all of that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that stuff. So just a reminder, I am a really small channel. Liking, subscribing, watching is the biggest thing. I really do appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and take care of yourselves.